Firstly, and in order to preemptively shield my ass, here is a link to a passable introduction to the concept of history in the modern and postmodern age. Now, if you made it to the end of that introduction without switching on Puzzle Bobble, then you probably deserve a medal. But don't expect an easier ride with other countries, which goes into more explanatory detail than that guy who called pest control over the pigeons.
The biggest one, you should see the size of it. It's putting a shadow over the house like something out of Independence Day. I'm expecting Jeff fucking Goldblum to pop out of the shed.
Other countries has the subtitle Contemporary Poetry Rewriting History to explain what it's about, which I guess is necessary because going by the title you'd be justified in thinking someone spent 19 years of their life in the wrong classroom. The book then has a foreword by Hannah Lowe explaining what it's about, followed by an introduction by Trévien explaining what it's about, followed by a second part of the introduction by Gareth explaining what it's about. Then there are notes to each individual poem explaining what each of them is about, and then notes on the contributors just in case you didn't have enough information. Now, I may be as wrong here as the time I thought it would be a good idea to do a Batman entrance into the kitchen, but I have this woeful impression that nobody involved was entirely clear as to what exactly this book was supposed to be. I mean, as far as I can tell from all the forewords and introductions, this is supposed to be a book about alternative ways of reading history. The title Other Countries refers, I think, to the fact that other time periods are kind of like other countries, in that they're foreign and, distant? I don't know. Many of these poems are not written originally for other countries, but are reprinted from somewhere else. I may add in passing that this is now the third book I own with James Brooks's The Crescent of Hearing, and that if I encounter it one more time, I'm going to pull a Jerry Maguire.
Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm not gonna do what you all think I'm gonna do, which is just pull him out!
I'm not really blaming James Brooks for not writing new poems, because he's been really busy putting up his dance videos. You guys should check them out, they're real good. In fact, it's the most impressive mashup I've seen since Professor Ira Lightman did his jump style take on a Let It Go remix from Frozen. Okay, I've gone about 500 miles out on a limb, but I don't remember what on earth I was talking about. Ah yes, the poems. One of the things that the editors and the writers seem to agree on is that the book should read history through the lens of minority discourse. So, splitting the poems in this anthology into groups, the most common are about the perspective of women or non-white ethnicities in history. A second, smaller group of poems are about the epistemological problems posed by history, i.e. about the limits of what we can know about the past and by extension about ourselves. And the rest of the poems are about a whole variety of disparate themes, and I wasn't really able to find a unifying thread for them, though they do include the two absolute gems by Rose Lemberg and Harry Mann that stood out for me as the highlight of the book. Now, Trévien's intro says, we wanted a broad spectrum of voices and viewpoints that would embrace humanity in all of its diversity. This is of course an important ambition, and it's really quite impressive how varied and different the backgrounds of the poets involved are. At the same time, I would have liked a similar concern shown for, the actual contents of the book. Out of 38 poems in the book, 5 deal with the Middle Ages, 2 with ancient history, and 2 are philosophical and non-specific. Meaning 29 are all contained in a bracket between the 16th and 21st century, and of these 29, 19 are set from the 20th century onwards. This is a massive slant in favor of modern history over classical and medieval history, and one that plays right into one of the most common and arbitrary preconceptions about the topic, that the importance of an event is directly proportional to how recent it was. This wouldn't be so important if the book's stated aim wasn't to challenge precisely this kind of preconception by putatively rewiring history. On that subject, in her foreword, Hannah Lowe tells us why she liked that subtitle so much. Rewinding history seems full of the possibility of giving history a new charge, acknowledging that history can be dynamic and dialogic, a current which can run back and forth along wires, be redirected and forge new connections across an indeterminate matrix. These lines reminded me of Shakespeare, in the Bertie Wooster Thug Life interpretation.
It's like Shakespeare. Sounds well enough, it doesn't actually mean anything.
Talking shit cause I'm down for my set. I'm a vet, smoking on a wet cigarette.
I suppose this leads me to the main problem with this book. The individual poems are generally quite good, but the anthology's approach to the problem of history seems rather shallow. In particular, its conceit that these poets are rewiring history rests on the assumption that there is such a thing as a stable, dominant historical narrative. In reality, history is a narrative, or more aptly a plurality of narratives, that is already constantly rewiring itself, contradicting itself, endlessly changing shape and form. Even those narratives that are apparently most conservative and biased are actually reinterpreting the past events in a way that changes them. Claiming that your own book is the one doing the real or proper rewiring means investing yourself with an authority and an importance in a way that is typical of precisely those dominant forces this book supposedly criticizes. Other Countries has some good individual poems and is generally a fun read, but ultimately it falls under the weight of its own massive ambition. You can't hope to create an anthology about a topic as gigantic as history without narrowing it down a little first or accepting some limitation. This is especially true when you get entangled in the same mechanisms you're trying to criticize. Other Countries is very good at questioning the assumptions of others, but it's not nearly as effective at questioning its own.
No shit.